Michelle Bridges had it all: fame, fitness, and admiration, but behind the Instagram perfect smile, a terrifying secret was unfolding. Every meal she trusted, every supplement she took, was slowly turning against her, and the person she thought she could rely on most was the one orchestrating it. What began as ordinary fatigue would spiral into a shocking tale of betrayal, sabotage, and survival that would change her life forever. Michelle Bridges had always been a symbol of health, discipline, and vitality. To the public, she was the perfect embodiment of fitness, success, discipline, confident, and seemingly untouchable. Her mornings began with sunrise runs, her diet meticulously planned, and her social media filled with inspiring updates on workouts and meal prep. Fans admired her consistency, aspiring to emulate her lifestyle, believing that Michelle's life was free from the ordinary struggles that most people faced. But beneath the polished exterior, a storm was quietly brewing, one that would shake her world to its core. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Michelle began feeling a heaviness that sleep could not lift. Workouts that were once effortless left her drained, her muscles aching in unusual ways. At first, she attributed it to overtraining or stress from her relentless schedule. Doctors confirmed her concerns were minor, perhaps fatigue, dehydration, or the pressures of constant travel, but something in her gut refused to accept that explanation. There was a nagging sense that these symptoms were more than they seemed, a feeling that something in her environment was quietly conspiring against her health. The first major warning came during a routine fitness shoot. Michelle had prepared meticulously, fueling her body with carefully selected supplements and meals. Yet halfway through, she felt dizzy, her vision blurred, and her heart raced unpredictably. The crew noticed her pallor, but she brushed it off, insisting it was nothing serious. Behind the camera, however, a creeping anxiety took hold. She realized that these episodes were becoming increasingly frequent, unpredictable, and severe. Her body, normally a reliable instrument of strength, felt fragile, as if it had been betrayed from within. What made the situation more terrifying was its inexplicable nature. There was no illness in her family history that could account for her symptoms. Every test returned normal results, yet her body continued to fail her. The private struggle that began as ordinary fatigue began to morph into something far more sinister. Michelle started noticing small anomalies: items misplaced in her kitchen, supplements with unusual textures, and flavors that didn't taste as they should. It was as if the very environment she trusted had turned against her. The growing realization was chilling. This was not merely a health battle, but a carefully orchestrated assault designed to mimic illness and confusion. What seemed like personal weakness was, in fact, the opening act of a larger, far more menacing plan. Each day that passed drew her deeper into a shadowy world where nothing was as it seemed, and the question of who was responsible lingered, unanswered, casting a dark cloud over every aspect of her once orderly life. As the days turned into weeks, Michelle's condition worsened in ways she could no longer ignore. The fatigue that had once seemed manageable grew relentless, spreading into every part of her life. Simple tasks, like preparing a meal or checking emails, became exhausting. Her workouts, which had always been a source of pride and control, now left her trembling and drained, forcing her to cut sessions short. At first, she tried to convince herself that it was just a period of overwork, a temporary setback that rest could fix. But deep down, she knew something far more dangerous was at play. Michelle began paying closer attention to the details of her daily routine, noticing small inconsistencies that didn't add up. Meals she had prepared herself tasted subtly different, her favorite supplements seemed weaker, and items in her kitchen appeared to have been moved. Each anomaly was minor in isolation, almost imperceptible, but together they formed a troubling pattern. It was as though someone had studied her life, her habits, and her vulnerabilities, learning how to manipulate her without her noticing. The thought that someone could intentionally undermine her health sent a chill through her, and she began to suspect that she was no longer in full control of her own environment. Despite the creeping fear, Michelle tried to maintain normalcy. She appeared confident in public, smiling during appearances and posting updates on social media, masking the exhaustion she felt inside. She feared that revealing her struggles would make her seem weak, but in truth, the reality was far more frightening. She was being targeted, slowly poisoned by someone who understood her routines and knew how to exploit them. The more she reflected, the more she realized that the attacks were calculated, precise, and designed to mimic natural illness. Every meal, every supplement, every ordinary action became a potential threat, creating a pervasive sense of paranoia. Michelle's thoughts turned inward as she questioned her trust in those around her. Friends, colleagues, and even people she considered close were now under scrutiny in her mind. Each smile or casual visit raised questions. Could this person be part of the plan? Could they be responsible for the mysterious decline in her health? The uncertainty gnawed at her, making it impossible to relax, impossible to feel safe. She knew that if she was going to survive this invisible assault, she had to uncover the truth. Determined not to be a passive victim, Michelle began documenting her daily experiences meticulously, recording every symptom, every strange taste, every unexplained occurrence. What began as simple fatigue had evolved into a dangerous and calculated game of deception, and Michelle understood that uncovering the truth was the only way to reclaim her life. Michelle's investigation into her own mysterious decline took a decisive turn when she decided to test the very supplements and foods she had trusted for years. It started as a cautious experiment, samples discreetly sent to laboratories to check for purity and safety. What the results revealed was more alarming than she could have imagined. Traces of substances appeared that should never have been there, chemicals capable of slowly weakening the body over time. It wasn't accidental contamination. The pattern suggested deliberate tampering, calculated to mimic natural illness while eroding her health. The realization struck like a lightning bolt. She had been poisoned, slowly and intentionally, by someone who knew her habits intimately. The implications were terrifying. This was not a random act, nor a case of negligent oversight. It was a targeted attack, planned with precision and executed over months. Michelle began retracing every interaction, every routine, every meal she had consumed in private. The idea that someone close, someone she had welcomed into her life and trusted implicitly, could orchestrate such an attack sent waves of disbelief and fear through her. Every familiar face now carried a hint of suspicion, and every ordinary moment became a potential threat. The betrayal cut deeper than the physical effects of the poisoning. It was psychological, insidious, and profoundly personal. Michelle's once predictable world became a maze of uncertainty. She noted patterns in her symptoms, linking them to particular supplements, meals, and even locations in her home. The meticulous documentation she had begun months earlier now proved invaluable. Each small anomaly, once dismissed as coincidence, now revealed itself as part of a chilling sequence. She realized the perpetrator understood her schedule, her preferences, and her vulnerabilities. This was a calculated plan, executed with patience and precision, designed to destabilize her without leaving obvious evidence. Fear quickly transformed into resolve. Michelle knew that understanding the perpetrator's methods was the key to stopping them. She began setting small, controlled traps, monitoring her environment with cameras and collecting evidence methodically. Every detail mattered, from the placement of items in her kitchen to the timing of deliveries and visits. The stakes were high. She was confronting an invisible enemy who had intimate access to her life. With each new piece of evidence, the truth became clearer, and the shadow over her health battle grew heavier. The line between victim and investigator blurred, and Michelle realized that her survival depended not only on recovering her physical health, but also on exposing the betrayal that had nearly destroyed her. Michelle's determination to uncover the truth grew stronger with each passing day. She realized that her health could no longer improve until she identified the source of the sabotage. What began as private suspicion had now transformed into a methodical investigation. Every corner of her home became a place of scrutiny, every routine a potential clue. She began setting up discreet cameras and recording devices in key locations, capturing anyone who entered her space. Every meal, every supplement, and every bottle of water was monitored, labeled, and stored for testing. The fear of being poisoned again heightened her vigilance, but it also fueled her resolve to reclaim control over her life. Days later, the evidence she had painstakingly gathered revealed something horrifying. The footage showed a figure entering her home during times when she was away or asleep, handling her belongings with familiarity and ease. The subtle movements, the quiet steps, and the deliberate care taken to avoid detection confirmed Michelle's worst suspicions. The perpetrator was someone she knew well, someone with intimate access to her personal life. The betrayal was not abstract, it was tangible, personal, and devastating. The realization that someone she had trusted could turn against her so maliciously shook her to her core. Every interaction, every shared moment, every smile now carried the weight of doubt and suspicion. Michelle's mind raced as she tried to identify the motive. This was no ordinary act of malice. It was calculated, precise, and designed to undermine her completely. It wasn't about money, fame, or recognition. It was about power, envy, and the desire to destroy someone she had once elevated. The person who had committed this crime had studied her, learned her routines, and exploited her vulnerabilities. The thought that someone could harbor such resentment and channel it into a covert attack left Michelle both horrified and determined. She realized that bringing this person to justice would require patience, strategy, and meticulous documentation. As the investigation progressed, Michelle compiled the evidence into an organized timeline, linking the symptoms she had suffered to specific incidents of tampering. Every hidden camera recording, every sample of food or supplement, and every unusual occurrence became part of a pattern pointing to a single suspect. The truth was becoming undeniable, and the sense of relief that justice might be possible began to replace the fear that had consumed her for months. What started as a personal health battle had evolved into a confrontation with a calculated betrayal, a dark revelation that tested not only Michelle's strength but also her courage, intelligence, and determination to survive and expose the crime. With the evidence in her hands, Michelle finally felt a glimmer of control returning to her life. Months of fear, confusion, and weakness had left her exhausted, but the clarity that came from uncovering the truth gave her renewed strength. Every recorded moment, every contaminated supplement, every anomaly meticulously documented, painted a vivid picture of a calculated assault. It was undeniable. Someone had intentionally tried to destroy her health, and the truth could no longer remain hidden. Michelle's next step was to involve the authorities, presenting the proof she had gathered with unwavering precision. The investigation confirmed Michelle's worst fears. The person responsible was someone she had trusted completely, someone who had had unrestricted access to her home and personal life. The betrayal was shocking not only because of the crime itself, but because it had been executed with such intimate knowledge of her habits and routines. The authorities uncovered the timeline of the poisoning, showing that each act was deliberate, designed to mimic natural illness while systematically weakening her over time. The revelation sent shockwaves through her inner circle and captured public attention, turning her personal struggle into a story of calculated deception and survival. Despite the relief of knowing the truth, the road to recovery was far from easy. Michelle had to rebuild not only her physical health but also her sense of safety and trust. Every meal, every supplement, and every interaction required renewed caution. Yet she faced these challenges with determination, transforming her ordeal into a source of empowerment. Michelle chose to share her story publicly, not to dwell on the betrayal, but to raise awareness about the dangers of manipulation and the resilience required to survive it. Her openness became a powerful message. Even those who appear invincible can face hidden threats, and strength is defined not only by physical ability, but by the courage to confront betrayal and fight back. Michelle's survival and advocacy turned the narrative from victimhood to victory. Her journey through fear, doubt, and deliberate harm became a compelling story of resilience and justice. The person responsible was held accountable, their calculated attacks exposed for the world to see. Michelle's health gradually returned, but more importantly, she reclaimed control over her life and her narrative. What began as a mysterious health battle had evolved into a testament to human endurance, courage, and the power of uncovering the truth. Her experience became a warning, a lesson, and an inspiration, demonstrating that even in the face of betrayal and hidden danger, it is possible to survive, fight back, and emerge stronger than before.